Very excited to have you here. Datto is a longtime partner of Lincoln's, and we are very excited to have Mike DePalma with us. And we thought that it would be kind of timely and relevant to talk about, just from an outsourced perspective, right? There are so many levels of managed services that you can engage with a partner on. And I think people think, well, if I have managed services, then I don't have any internal IT. Or, I suspect that people have multiple layers of what their own definition of managed care is or managed services is. So our goal today is really just to kind of high level what we believe co-managed to be. And then, Datto is very involved in the MSP. They are one of the leading MSPs to other MSPs like us. So very excited to hear their perspective on the market and what IT, outsourced services can look like for you and your organization. So with that, Mike, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'm going to go on mute.
All right. Thank you very much. So I'm Mike DePalma. I'm the Senior Channel Development Manager with Datto. So we're a backup disaster recovery company based out of Norwalk, Connecticut, so not too far from you guys. As Anne-Marie mentioned, we work with strategic partners all over the world, managed service providers. You might have seen us in the news. Lately, we just went public. Back in October, our ticker is actually MSP, so to kind of show where we are with the MSP space. But we have seen a huge evolution, as Anne-Marie mentioned, from the traditional outsourced only, hey, I'm going to write you a check every month and you're going to manage my IT, to a shift to this co-managed model. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. But I do want to set the stage a little bit with where we are and why we've seen that shift. I'm kind of a history nerd. I like watching documentaries and read a lot of history books. So I like to put things in context of kind of where we are along the historical timeline here. And if you look at any of the big eras throughout the timeline of human history, the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Renaissance, there were always some form of technological advancement during those ages that kind of propelled the human race forward. Now, there were always bad actors, unfortunately, exploiting that same technology. If you fast forward 500 years from now, historians are going to clearly say we're in the digital transformation age, the data-driven age. And thank goodness we're in this age, right? How would we have survived 2020 if we weren't able to collaborate and stay productive while working from various different places? So that's good. The problem is, again, the bad actors are over there exploiting that same technology and really focusing on the small to medium-sized business space. We've done 4 years in a row now, the kind of a state of the channel ransomware report. So this is a ransomware report that focuses specifically on the small to medium-sized business community. It's actually the largest of its kind. And we've done it for 4 years, and we've seen pretty much the trends stay stagnant in terms of where we're seeing the attacks come from, who's being attacked, how they're getting in. And one of the things that's really been helpful is that co-managed model to be able to make sure that there's a very strong multi-layered approach. One of the things that we've seen year after year are a lot of the folks that are attacked and these ransomware viruses do get through, they do have anti-intrusion in place. They've got antivirus, anti-malware, all of that stuff's already in place. That's not to say that that's not needed. Of course, you need to have those things. But the point of this is there are a lot of businesses that say, I made an investment in security, right? I've made an investment, I'm good. I don't need to worry about those next steps. And one of the things that I like to quote is something from Gartner. They had a study that came out, it was about IT in general, but they talked about IT in the sense of whatever you're buying or whatever you're selling, assume that it fails. What happens next? All right. Hopefully everything, all these scam emails get caught up in your spam box and never get to you. Okay, what happens next? All right, what if you do click on it? What happens next? So you do need to have that multi-layered approach. And that's really where, folks like Lincoln IT can step in and do a gap analysis and make sure that A, you're protected right now, but B, it's constantly being monitored, because the threats that we're seeing today, they might be completely different than the threats we're going to see in 12 months. So security really isn't something you go buy off a shelf and say, hey, I bought my security package. It really is an ongoing kind of culture of security. And so we've seen numbers like that for a long time. Now, the ways that they're getting in really hasn't changed. We are seeing some brute force come in, but the vast majority of these attacks, phishing emails. And again, they're not the emails that are from your long lost uncle, hey, send me $10,000, I'm going to make you a millionaire. Those probably are getting caught up in your spam filter. And even if they get through, you're not falling for them. When you hear the phrase socially engineered spear phishing attacks, what this means is we all provide a lot of information about ourselves, about our business. It's all out there online. So they could spend 10 minutes doing a little bit of research about you and send out an email that looks like it's coming from a colleague, a vendor, a client, your school that you went to. They're going to look and say, okay, I went to Johns Hopkins. I got my 20-year reunion coming up. All right, here's all the festivities you can find by clicking on this link here, and you find out what's going on. They're very good at that. So the phishing emails are really the way that they're getting in. And what's scary about that is you can have a lot of really good systems in place, but ultimately they're relying on user error. They're relying on somebody opening the door and letting them in to go infect that network. And so, these criminals, they're opportunistic. They see any kind of chaos that's going on, they're going to exploit. So that's why we saw phishing emails days into the true pandemic where they look like they came from the CDC, the World Health Organization. Hey, click here to find out cases in your area, or here's some of the symptom signs, click here. And they were extremely successful, and they will continue to find whatever that chaos is in our economy, in our nation. They're going to go and try to exploit that. So that's one of the scary pieces. Now, the scarier part about these attacks is the false sense of security of, okay, well, what are they going to do? They're going to encrypt my data. I've got a backup. I could always go restore my data. What are they going to do with it? The problem is not the risk of losing data for the most part, because the businesses know most businesses are protecting their data in some form or fashion. It's the downtime that really is putting businesses out of business or putting them in a very precarious place right there. So it really is the amount of time it takes you to detect that ransom attack. So they weren't infecting backups and laying dormant back there and not letting you know that they're there. And then ultimately, how long is it going to take you to recover that data? Are you out there using a kind of traditional commoditized form of backup? We're looking at days or weeks to get that data back. You could see stories, you read the story, the city of Baltimore got hit twice, actually. Their attack, the first one, they asked for $75,000. They didn't pay it. The impact was $18 million. City of Atlanta, hospitals, all of those things. And those are the ones that make the news. But their focus tends to be on the small to medium-sized business community because A, they know they're going to have a higher success rate of not only getting in, but also people paying, because they can't float an $18 million loss. Most businesses cannot float being down for 2 weeks. And so they know they're going to have a higher success rate of people paying. And you want to see real numbers. I mean, I gave you the numbers of Baltimore and the ones that are publicly issued, but we've got numbers from the small to medium-sized business community. I can remember 3 years ago going out on stage and talking about the results of the 2018 report and saying, look, the average ransom payment's only $4,300. The average impact is 10 times higher, right? It jumps off the screen at you. This is the math that we're talking about. Look where it's gone over the last 3 years. The actual amount has stayed pretty stagnant. We're still looking at, $5,000, $6,000 is the average ransomware payment. The impact to those small businesses, $270,000. That's the math. And how many businesses can float that? That's why so many people pay, because they're put in the spot of saying, hey, I got two options. I can sit there and pay this ransom and hope to get my data back, or I can try to restore and come back to them in a week and saying, I'm not up into a production environment. And now, oh, by the way, that $5,600 has turned into $10,000. And that's what we're seeing. And so they're going to keep, I phrase it as, I'm unfortunately a big Met fan. And so I always phrase things in baseball terms, but you got the home run hitters. Those are the ones that make the news, that hit the city of Baltimore and all the rest. And then you have the singles hitters where most of these criminals lie, and they just attack thousands of businesses every day, knowing they're going to get into more businesses and they're going to get more of them to pay. And ultimately, every single industry is vulnerable. We saw a huge spike in healthcare, again, because they're going to exploit the chaos of what's going on. The healthcare system clearly was taxed back in 2020. And so they're going to go and they're going to continue to attack that. And FBI has put out some statistics about that as well. A lot of those attacks on the hospitals, they don't get reported. They will give you stats about hospitals being attacked, but they won't be specific about which hospital that is, because again, it causes panic. So this is what we're facing, but ultimately every single industry is being attacked because they don't care what your data is, really how much data you have. They just know that you can't operate without it. We're in that digital transformation age. And so all they got to do is hold it hostage, and they know that you could be a one-man nonprofit, you could be a 200 person law firm. It doesn't matter. You can't operate without it. They're going to start focusing on accounting firms coming up. You can mark my words, because they know the season is coming and they know that those folks are going to pay. Now, the scariest stat, and I kind of take it as a personal offense because all I do are these presentations and clearly I'm not doing a great job, is that only 3 in 10 of these business owners feel that ransomware is something they need to be highly concerned about in 2021. despite all these numbers, despite the fact that it's $1 billion a year industry, only 3 in 10 small business owners feel like this is something they need to worry about. Criminals love this stat because that just means their guard is let down and they have no plans of even remediating that issue. And they're gonna lick their chops in 2021 and saying, okay, well, we don't have to change what we're doing. We've been doing it. The business community is telling us that they're still not scared of us. We don't have to make any changes. We can continue to do exactly what we're doing to continue those attacks from occurring. So that's a number that we really need to see rise. What's interesting about that, the 2019 report, that number was 39. It actually came down. And I think that, you know, maybe businesses in 2020 were worrying about a lot of other things, keeping their doors open. And maybe that's not something that they feel like they need to be highly concerned about. But I mean, I could tell you, look at that last slide, $274,000. That's a number that you need to be focused on. The way that we've communicated has changed as well. Data lives in a lot of different places. Again, thank goodness we live in a world where we could have meetings online, stare at the Zoom screen. We were talking about our new lifestyle, me and Anne-Marie, before everybody jumped on, about, you know, all of the protocols here on Zoom and Teams and all the rest. And that's the way we've been doing business. And although we're hopefully going to all be back in the office sometime this year, I feel like this is what is here to stay. We've all become now set in our ways. I don't know that we're going to go back to the long conference tables and having everybody come in. I miss that. I'm a face-to-face kind of person. But I feel like a lot of businesses are going to continue to operate this way, at least to some extent. And so again, the criminals are going to find that data wherever it lives. They're smart. People think, all right, attacks only occur on on-premise Windows-based servers, right? That's what you read about. Yes, the vast majority of those attacks do. That's only because that's where the vast majority of business data lives. As that data starts moving to different places, these criminals are smart. And again, they're opportunistic. They're going to find that data. So we're finding a lot of attacks on those SaaS applications, the Microsoft 365, the G Suites, Dropboxes. They are finding ways to go in and attack that. And again, you could read stories, after story about these attacks, but all from the government down to the security experts are telling us that this is the new wave. This is the way folks are getting in. And again, the reason why it's vulnerable is because they're mostly waiting for somebody to open the door and let them in. And both G Suite and Microsoft 365 have what's called the shared responsibility model, meaning, yes, they'll protect the integrity of their cloud, but the data that lives within it is the responsibility of the tenant, ultimately you. And I did a presentation about 1.5 years ago up at the Burlington, Massachusetts headquarters of Microsoft, sat on a panel next to one of their senior cloud engineers. And she openly said it to the crowd of 300 people. We have the shared responsibility model. We are not responsible for you doing, making deletions, clicking on something else, letting somebody in there. We're going to protect and make sure that our cloud is not compromised, but that data is your responsibility. You bear some responsibility there. And so we've seen attacks, and I could tell you a real life story. You want to Google a real life story, Google a guy named Kevin Mitnick. At one point in the 90s, he was the most notorious hacker in the world. He's on the FBI's most wanted list. FBI tracked him down and caught him. He went to jail. He came out as kind of a catch me if you can style story. He started working with the good guys. We hired him to come out to our big DattoCon annual conference back in 2019, and he created a live virus. This was not a theoretical, this might be how hackers get in. No, he created a virus to show you and show the government this is how easy it is. And he stood up on stage, and he had 2 laptops open, and he said, this is how easy it is to deploy. Email comes in, it looks pretty legit, Anti-Spam Pro. You're sitting in your kitchen, your home office. It looks like something I need to upgrade, right? All right, well, let me go take a look. Let me just accept this. And the moment you click that accept button, every single email is now encrypted. And by the way, if you had admin access, every single email within that domain can be encrypted. And so the only email that you can open up is the one from Kevin with the pretty red screen that says, oh, I'll unencrypt all these emails if you pay me X amount of money in Bitcoin. This demonstration took all of 2 minutes. And again, this was 1.5 years ago. Think about how much more sophisticated they've gotten. That's why we see that number. That's 65% of managed service providers that have reported attacks on their clients on those SaaS applications. So it's something that you really need to be concerned about. If anybody wants to see that video, we had him come to the office and record it. It's pretty interesting to see it live in action. And when we look at these attacks and what the government is trying to do about it, yes, they're putting regulations in. Those regulations, they're well-intentioned, but they don't have any way to prevent these attacks from occurring. They're not helping to catch any of these guys because for the most part, they're using Bitcoin as the way to transfer money, and that's almost impossible to track. And so what they're doing is they're trying to shift that burden over to the business community, saying it's your responsibility to protect your data, your employee data, your client data, vendor data that you might be securing as well. That's your responsibility. And they've been saying anecdotally for years that you're not supposed to pay. You're emboldening these guys. You put a bigger bullseye on your back. We really, at the level under $100,000, we don't have the resources to go and investigate that. And they've been saying that on stage at different presentations I've done with them. But finally, on October 1st, the Treasury Department put out a statement, an official statement that said that by paying that ransom, you are also at risk of being in violation of the law. And the reason for this is a lot of times the folks that are behind these attacks, they're terrorist organizations. They are enemy nation states. So by paying that ransom, you could be inadvertently helping to fund terror, which clearly is a felony. There's not a lot of teeth to this statement yet because they don't have a way of seeing where that goes, but it shows you where, again, the government is going towards. They're going to put the burden and the blame on you. And if you get attacked, you better believe that not only you have to worry about that attack, they're going to come knocking on your door and they're going to say, show me your disaster recovery plan. Show me how you were protecting that data. That's where we've seen the shift to that co-managed model, because it is extremely difficult to not only keep up to pace with all the different technologies out there and what integrates with what, and am I cobbling together a solution, but also staying up to date on all those regulations, because they will come knocking on your door. And to be able to slide a document across the table and say, yes, here it is, for the most part, what they're asking for is that you've shown best efforts, best due diligence to make sure you've protected it. And so, we're seeing this shift. It used to be, I've been in with Datto 6 years. 6 years ago, it was very rare that we saw managed service providers, other than, and Lincoln may have been doing it 6 years ago, but a lot of folks were either doing the full outsourced or they were doing some sort of break fix model. There wasn't a lot of collaboration. And I think a lot of that had to do with in-house IT people maybe trying to hold it close to the vest. They wanted to say, I could handle it all on my own. The last year has really shown that a lot of these businesses do need help. And there are places where you can work in conjunction with folks like Lincoln IT to make sure that happens. Because we did another survey to the small to medium-sized business community, asking them a lot of things about their IT, because we wanted valuable information to us, although we don't sell direct. That's where our partners do. So we wanted to be able to provide information. About a third of businesses that we interviewed as we moved through different seat sizes said that they lost revenue due to IT. So it's something that clearly is not just a cost center, it's a real part of doing business. What was interesting was we've already seen that shift start to occur. About 29% of the businesses that we talked to were working with a managed service provider. Within that 30% bucket there, 61% did work in a co-managed IT model. They already were working with a managed service provider while also having in-house IT folks on staff. And why did they do this? What were the challenges they were trying to serve? Well, security is clearly number one. That's where folks are really concerned, right? You're also looking at cost effectiveness, the increasing cost of IT. There is a lot of vendors in the space right now. I do industry events, normally out on the road 3-4 days a week. Now they've shifted to these, virtual events. There are vendors at these events that I've never heard of because they just came about in the last 12 months. It's very difficult for a business that's dealing with all different types of things to go out and vet all of these vendors, see what integrates with what, and make sure that you can manage these new solutions. Again, that's what folks like Lincoln IT do. They vet everyone. And so as a new security company comes online, they're doing that vetting, and they're not going towards the folks with the best marketing materials or the flashiest salesperson or the cheapest one. They're vetting it out to make sure that it's going to service their clients and fit into their overall stack of products to make sure everything's talking to one another. Again, when go ahead.
Mike, can I just comment here for a second?
Absolutely.
So, because I think that's a really key point. So one of the things about kind of the vetting, the solutions and the partners that we work with is that we also have an opportunity to compare that across multiple types of companies, industries. We have a very accurate line of sight about how businesses are using certain technologies and certain vendors. So we can call that into our, kind of analytics and when we're looking at different solutions. And that gives us, I think it gives us a little bit of a competitive advantage when you're responsible for IT internally. Obviously, you're going to have access to what's available to you, and the pitch might even be a little bit different when you're talking to the vendors. So I found being on this side of the house that's been very valuable, from my experience.
Yeah, I think that's completely right. And when you think about a vendor and they're trying to make a sale directly to a small business, that's a sale. That's what, I mean, I used to be in sales. I know that that sale is different than trying to create a partnership with a managed service provider, because that's a lifelong relationship, because that one relationship with a managed service provider probably means 100 different products they can sell, which means they have to make sure that that service is top notch throughout. They know that managed service provider can go out and go to one of their competitors. Whereas working directly with one specific business, they could probably a monthly check-in call will be fine, and hey, everything's going all right, and all those type of things. So it does go a long way, and that's a reason why a lot of folks like us have moved to that channel-only model. It makes a lot of sense on both sides of things. When you look at how long folks have been outsourcing their IT, I think this goes to that stat that we saw, but also to my earlier point. The folks that have been using the outsourced only model, they've been doing it for years, and they've been comfortable with it. They understand how that works. When you look at the co-managed IT model, 29% of those folks that made up that 61% number just started doing it within the last 12 months. So it was a newer 12 months ago, 29% of those folks were handling it all in-house and now have seen the value in that co-managed model. And, I think it's something that is really going to continue to grow just based on the different presentations I've done. And when you look at customer satisfaction, how satisfied are these businesses with how they consume their IT? The least satisfied are those internal only folks. The next step would be the outsourced only, and the most satisfied are the folks working in that co-managed IT model. And I've seen that both statistically and anecdotally when I'm talking to small businesses, partners, all the rest. This is clearly where the industry is going. Especially as you move up market, but even in the small business space that might have an IT. We're seeing it in the financial space, especially where it might seem like a small business because there's only 8 people there, but they do have, a CTO on staff, and a lot of those folks are working with it for various reasons. But a lot of it does come down to, compliance and those type of things. So, some food for thought about all of those things. But what does a co-managed IT model really look like? What do you mean by working together? Well, again, Lincoln IT puts on a series of these events. I've been a part of a lot of them. I know they do a lot more. You go look at their beautifully revamped website, which is top notch there, Anne-Marie. They're trying to provide a lot of content. And it is important. Sounds, simple and almost too basic, but knowing your target online. But we just saw only 3 in 10 small business owners feel like they need to be concerned about this. So it is a constant educational process. Putting those policies and procedures in place, working with a third party really goes a long way. This is what they do. This is what they live and breathe. And so not only in the compliance reasons, but think about when you're going to talk to your underwriter for your cybersecurity insurance plan. You're able to slide a document that shows all of the check boxes that you've been doing to protect your business and your data. You're going to be viewed as a less risk business to do business with. I'm not an insurance agent. I can't give advice or tell you what that's going to be, but I can tell you it's like giving an insurance policy to a smoker or a non-smoker. They're going to see that, and that's something that you should be having. Lincoln IT at least be in the conversations and saying, hey, my insurance adjuster is asking for X, Y, and Z. The underwriter, what are we doing to make sure we check off those boxes? That's something to be proactive about. So you can do that. The ongoing employee training continues to be something that needs to be part of your business, especially as people are working in different locations. Your guard tends to drop down. At Datto, we get fake phishing emails all the time, and they look legit. A lot of them look like they come internally. If we see it and we spot something, we forward it over to our security team. They give you a thumbs up. Good job, Mike. Did the right thing. If I did fall for it and I clicked on it, I'd get another thumbs up saying, congrats, Michael, you just enrolled yourself in an hour-long tech training because you didn't listen to us the last time. This needs to be an ongoing process. Password management is critical. Simple things. This is one of those things you could work with Lincoln IT on. Password 1234 was the most common password 5 years ago. Fast forward to today, it's a similar variant. Maybe you throw an exclamation point in or an ampersand, like that's going to trick these guys. I saw a chart. I wish I could have the slide, but I saw a chart another vendor had put up, and they showed that an 8-digit letter only password can be cracked within well less than a second. You start adding numbers and symbols in there, still in a matter of seconds. You extend that to 16 digits with a combination of uppercase, lowercase, symbols, and numbers. it now extends out to 70 years before that software can crack that password. And so simple things like that. But I also think, you got to look at it as, something that is ongoing, and that folks are not using that same password for various different things. It's critical. As we shift to this new world, it's simple as leaving devices unattended. I used to work in Starbucks all the time, and it shocked me. You'd see people, leaving their laptops open as they went and ordered their coffee or stepped outside to make a phone call. You're in a public place on a public Wi-Fi. It amazed me. But again, that goes back to knowing your target. Folks don't think that's the case. Now that you might be working remote, I've got a 7 and a 9-year-old. I don't think that they want to do anything malicious, but they like Minecraft, they like Fortnite. They might go on my business laptop and go down a rabbit hole, and who knows where that leads them, right? So I never leave my device unattended. That's something that needs to be top of mind. Again, going into that, being careful where you click. The antivirus, anti-malware, everybody kind of knows, hopefully, that this is something you need to have in place. But again, this needs to be something that's ongoing, and understanding that it's not a purchase that you made and it's set it and forget it. There's a lot of changes that are occurring. That's where, Lincoln IT comes in, and it goes back to that vetting of different vendors, seeing where that fits into the overall stack. Now, I'm in the world of backups, disaster recovery. When we talk about business continuity, it's a lot different than traditional backup. A lot of in-house IT folks, they'll go buy backup that they've been using for a decade, thinking that's safe. Business continuity looks at things a lot differently. We had a gentleman post on the message board earlier during this Zoom before we started, that they had needed to use the failover, which means that we're able to keep you up and running. We won't go into that, but that's a conversation. If you don't have a business continuity solution in place, it's something you need to talk about. You need to have a mobile device policy. I think that's critical. And you need to know your people. And this goes down to, again, creating that culture of security, figuring out that everybody is all on the same page. And the one other piece I'll add to this is something simple. A lot of these things that I've mentioned, they're not costly, right? It's more about putting together an overall package, but simple things like multi-factor authentication. It amazes me that that's not even the law of the land at this point. This is as important, if not more important, than password management. When I sit down at my computer every day and I go to log in, I have to get a bounce to my my cell phone, facial recognition, then I'm able to get in. It takes all of 20 seconds. I helped one of the local school boards put together their IT budget pre-COVID as they were going to get approval. And I looked, and they didn't have anything for multi-factor authentication. And I said, Rob, this is something super simple and inexpensive. You need to have this in there. And they put it in the budget. I talked to them back in November, just a follow-up conversation. Yeah, things are going well, And I said, how's multi-factor going? And they didn't implement it. I said, why not? You had the budget. They said, we didn't want to burden our teachers with one more piece of technology to learn, because they were learning Google Classroom or whatever they were using. I mean, it was mind-boggling to me. I could teach you this in 30 seconds. And the first time you do it, you'll be frustrated. Day 2, it'll be second nature. But again, people don't do simple things. And a lot of the software that you're using already has it built in. You just have to turn it on. It's not even costly. So it's conversations like that. And that's where those conversations pop up, because a lot of times it might not be something you think about. But I do think that we are moving in the right direction as we see this shift over to co-managed IT. And I hopefully, when we run this ransomware report next year, that shift will help reduce some of those numbers and hopefully increase that 30% number, so that the business community as a whole, are kind of all on the same page. So, we're going to open it up to questions. I know a lot of the folks are already working with Lincoln IT. So if anybody wants to ask any questions, share any stories, now is the time to do that. I'll make it feel more warm here. I don't know, Anne-Marie, is there anything else that I might have missed about what those this co-managed IT relationships look like?
No, I think you hit a lot of the key things. I end up having a lot of policy-based conversations with my clients. I'm really glad that you included that, because I think, sometimes there's an assumption that, the IT is, or just, it's not even an assumption. I think it's a matter of time, right? I have the technology in place, right? So that should secure me. But really, the fact that gets overlooked, and I know for some of the folks on this call, I do those exercises with them. So I know that they are doing it, but, documenting the policies, revisiting them, right? So, whatever we had in place, even in 2020, probably looks very different. I did a lot of policy revision review with my clients last year because, things were different, right? They were working from home. What you said about your personal laptop, I think, is spot on, right? Your kids are homeschooling. Maybe they need a machine. I just got to pop on, do this quick homework assignment. And, you're so entrenched in the kind of the immediacy of what you need that there could be a little bit of a kind of, you forget that these other things are really important too. Or, if people are bringing their own devices, do they have the, corporate AV and whatever we've put in place. So I'm really excited to just have this conversation today and to be able to put this content out and to, just keep the awareness high, right? Because it starts with the awareness. And then I really love that you talked about the training, right? Because a big part of it is, and I'm more of a user than I am an IT person. I just happen to work for an IT company, but I think like a user. So like I'll get an alert on my laptop and I'll dismiss it. And then I'll get a second alert. And then usually by the second and a half alert, I'm like, I better tell somebody in IT that I'm getting this alert, because just because I work for a managed service provider, I'm busy. I can't deal with it right now, right? But that awareness and, I'm having these conversations every day. So it's very present in my day-to-day existence. But for some of the staff at some of the firms of the folks that are on the phone, they may not be as aware, right? So just those refreshers and just assuming that people don't know, or maybe they've just forgotten, or they just can't prioritize it, right? So creating a way that you create this culture. I really like the term culture of security. Mike, when we did that event together with a woman, that cybersecurity expert, she talked a lot about the value of a culture of security. I think the last thing I'll say about that is that if you are in an IT role in your organization, just keeping that window open a little bit so that people feel comfortable if they did maybe click on something that they shouldn't have, or they sort of downloaded something and then realized afterwards, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done this. Knowing that they could come to you, or come to us and say, I think I messed up, because that ability to come forward sooner rather than later can also prevent a potentially bigger issue. So those are the things I would add, I think.
Even something as simple as just doing an inventory of where all those devices live. You think you know it, or what SaaS applications we have. I talked to a business that they had the CTO say, okay, we want to analyze how many SaaS applications we use. And they went to billing and they said, okay, we're using 11 different SaaS applications. They then went and talked to all the departments. Turns out they had licenses for 72 different SaaS applications. They didn't even know it. The CTO didn't know it, because departments went rogue and said, hey, this is something really good, and weren't talking to one another. Now that we are in this agile work from anywhere space, do you know where all of your devices lives? Anything that has critical data on it, maybe it's your personal laptop. Hopefully you're sharing it to some sort of shared drive, but we live in the real world. People don't do that. So doing an inventory up front can be, it could be some time consuming at the beginning, but then as you add new devices or add new employees, adding that to your policies and procedures is something that is critical. Knowing who has access. A lot of times businesses will just give admin access to everybody because they're lazy and it's easy to do. I'm sure, Anne-Marie, you see that. Going in and making sure that people only have access to what they need to have access to is critical. I don't need to have any access to the tech side of Datto because I don't manage any devices and they don't grant me access. If Anne-Marie said, hey, can you dump into this device and see what's going on? You get some glary eyes, Anne-Marie, because I don't have access to it because I shouldn't have access to it.
Yeah, same here. I mean, people have offered me their passwords. I'm like, nope, I don't need to know. I'm going to send you to the person, because really, and I guess that's a really good point too, right? Like even within your MSP, like on the account team, we don't need to know, server passwords, any of that. That's what our, service team does. It's secure, it's protected. So we have policies internally that kind of speak to that, making sure that we're adhering to those types of things as well.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do all the talking. I want to give it back to the floor just for another minute. Does anybody have any questions, comments, anecdotes?
We covered it all, Anne-Marie.
I love when that happens.
I want to thank you guys for putting this on.
I'm sorry. I do have a question.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi, I'm with Tortorella Pools. We spoke with you guys a couple of years ago. We have co-managed IT, but I have a question about your techs and what kind of, do you do background checks on them, or what kind of vetting do you do? You know, we're talking about server and domain passwords. So what's the standard?
We absolutely do. Yeah, we have a very strong compliance posture. So we do background checks, not only on just our techs, but on all of our employees. And we have a very strong vetting process for employees, and then onboarding. And there's a whole process within onboarding of, you know, how long you have to be with the company before you get access to certain things. And, you know, that there's a very strong process around that.
Thank you for that. And then if people are terminated or they leave, then you know, what are your protocols as far as client passwords, things like that?
That's a really good question. So if you were an account of ours and someone who left the company had any access whatsoever to your specific, again, we work in teams, so not everybody has access to everything. So we would basically shut down or reach out to you to change passwords if there was an impact to your account. Ron, do I have that right?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First off, obviously the employee is cut off from all access. That's the first thing that we do. We typically deploy administrative level passwords that we can change quickly. If in fact this happens, unless you are requiring us to actually have named accounts. You know, we see that a lot in the healthcare space. But, you know, if you have just a general account, let's call it LinkedIn administrative account, and I have my team of users supporting Tortorella Pools, then I would go ahead and change that upon the termination of that employee, or if they decided to resign. And typically, if an employee decides to resign, we don't wait to change that. We may move them off the team and limit their access while they remain here. So there's a couple of different ways that we go about it to fully protect your infrastructure.
Great, thank you so much.
Welcome.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking, Ashley, and thank you for being here.
Any
other,
Henry?
Ref?
Hi. Yeah, also we also do background checks for clients should the client want an additional background check so that they can pass their vetting process.
Oh, right. In the co-managed suite, that's actually a really good point, right? So we would help a client if they were bringing someone in to internally support them, whether through us or within their own team. We work with them to clear them on a background side. Really good point. I didn't think about that. Great. Well, Mike, do you have anything you want to say to kind of wrap it up? I have a couple of things I'd just like to leave everybody with, but I want to give you a chance first.
No, I mean, thank you everybody for joining. Hopefully this was, insightful and got you at least thinking about some different things. And obviously I want to thank you guys over at Lincoln IT for including us in this. And anybody has any questions, if anybody wants to see that video of Kevin Mitnick, mdepalma@datto.com, or I can get it over to Anne Marie, and you can check that out. But yeah, I appreciate everybody's time this morning.
Thank you, Mike. Kyle, thank you. You know, we really appreciate our partnership with Datto. I want to just kind of leave you with a couple of, I guess we'll call them housekeeping. So Mike mentioned our website. Thanks for the plug, Mike. If you haven't been to lincolnit.com, I'd like to invite you to go there. We're aiming to keep the content current, and we do a vendor feature, probably every between 3 and 5 weeks, depending on what's going on and where things are moving in the industry. So on our homepage, we have a vendor at the podium, and we're proud to say that it's Datto right now. So if you wanted to learn more about Datto, you could go to the podium at lincolnit.com and read about what they're doing in the industry. We also have a blog that speaks a little bit more to co-managed services. And we've got some tech bites on our website that talk about co-managed and all things IT, IT care and IT managed, related. So hope you'll visit us often. If you're not getting our newsletter and you want to, shoot me a message and I'll get that out to you. And we really appreciate all of you being here. For those of you that we're already working with, I want to thank you again for your partnership and for your business. And for those of you that we may have the opportunity to work with in the future, looking forward to continuing that conversation, whatever way is meaningful to you. So have a great Thursday. And thanks for your time.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Great job, Mike. Thanks again.
Appreciate it, Ron. Talk soon.
All right.